Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and if you missed the channel news that went out earlier today, which really at the time of recording was 2 minutes ago, but whatever, we hit 5,000 subscribers on this channel. We reached our goal. Thank you all so much. I am humbled, blessed, and honored that you guys have really helped grow this channel to what it is. I owe a huge shout out to my family for supporting me through this journey. Thank you so much, especially my wife. She's amazing. So let's dive in. We've got to talk about it. Look, if you guys missed that video, there's a special poll right now. Go check it out. Let me know what time you want me to stream, and then we'll figure out a date, and we'll do that. Remember, guys, Wampa's not always in your team, but he's always in our hearts, and he's going to be Relic 8 soon. I am so excited. Hopefully, you guys are too. But we need to talk about some Zetas you need to skip early to go hand in hand with our 2023 updated farming guide. So skip these Zetas early and apply them later on down the road. And the first one is Darth Vader's leadership. So the reason this is a great Zeta, right? This is one that you need to apply, but everybody loves to cover the Zetas that you should equip early. And then they never really talk about ones that you skip and go down later. And to me, Darth Vader's leadership is there because as a leader, you might not always use him in that leader slot. You might run him under Emperor Palpatine, so you're not going to get to use the Zeta all the time. The other thing is that I feel the No Escape Zeta is a lot more beneficial to him than, and Merciless Massacre obviously more beneficial than the leadership is. So I think the leadership, something you're going to go and equip later on down the road as you use him as a leader more and more. But I think it's one you skip early and you're going to apply it later, and I think that will give you a broader roster with more impactful Zetas across your account. Alright, the next one is Boba Fett. And this is on his unique ability, and it's recover 100% protection on a finishing blow. It's a little bit too situational for me, because you're basically relying on him to get the kill every single time. And yes, you can kind of set that up on offense, but on defense, that's not always happening. And it's also something for me that, yes, it makes him more annoying, but it's not going to necessarily transform Boba into something that he's not, right? It's not like it's adding a crazy amount of turn meter to the team or the ability's doing more damage. It's just kind of like, hey, if you get a kill with this, you're going to get 100% protection back. In my opinion, I think there's more impactful Zetas to get. I think it's something you get down the road, because as you get further down the road, I think it makes him a lot more annoying to deal with. But early on, it's not going to have the impact like a Bosk leadership or unique would comparative to this. So that's kind of why we're saying to save this for later. It's just there's not enough impact for it. Alright, bring them in cold with Grief Karga. This is another one of these situations where all you're getting is 20% more damage on this mass assist. So instead of assisting at 80% damage, you're going to assist at 100% damage. It's great, right? It really is nice. But the impact that the Sweeten the Deal has comparatively, right, with the Dispel All debuffs, and this just really doesn't add enough for me. Especially because a lot of times when you're using this, you're trying to trigger a contract or gain turn meter with Mando. This is not something this is kind of one of I would compare this Zeta, right, the extra damage on this, to the players who rely on Moff Gideon to be the fastest character in an Imperial Trooper team. That Moff Gideon is a crutch for people who can't make Piet fast enough. I think this is another similar situation where if you're relying on this assist to do all of your damage, then your bounty hunters aren't properly modded. That's just, look, I said it, I'm going to insult people, but that's the truth. It's more of a crux than anything. Equip it later on because that is crucial for countering Lord Vader with Fennec, but in the early game, you don't need to have that Zeta. It's not enough impact. Next is Commander Luke Skywalker here, and his leadership is something that you can equip later on down the road. It's when you resist detrimental effect, you're going to gain 5% turn meter, right? Rebel allies. The thing is, it binds all things. Whenever he inflicts a debuff, he's going to gain 10% turn meter, and other allies gain half that amount. So you're getting more turn meter gain out of it binds all things, plus whenever he's resisting, he's gaining 5% protection. So it's adding additional survivability and providing your team with more turn meter than his leadership. So I 100% think the unique is worth it, right? Way more worth it than the leader. Learn Control, I would also place above the leadership. So the leader is, it took me years to bring the leadership because it just doesn't, the 5% turn meter is nice. And I think there's certain situations where that's so important. But for a lot of ways that CLS is a brutal team to get through, is because of these things here and not really because of the extra turn meter gain. That later on down the road, that's what matters, but early on, you're not going to really be relying on it. All right, the next one, Admiral Piet here in the suborbital strike. This Zeta is good, do not get me wrong. It's not as good as the Emperor's Trap. That's a far superior Zeta. The thing with this Zeta, the reason I say like for mirrors only, is that when you get your Executor and you want to have the fastest ship possible, you need both of his Zetas, right? You're going to want both Zetas. It's not a bad one, right? There's a reduced cooldown. You're going to gain inevitable failure stacks. You can inflict daze, right? And then if the attack defeats an enemy, inflict fear. So like that's awesome, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that is just so good. And it's one that I think you kind of wait later on down the road, because similar to that Boba Fett, right? It's, part of this is situationally saying, oh, if this defeats an enemy, then inflict fear. I mean, these things are nice. The fear is really, really nice if you can time that right. That fear has saved my butt in so many battles. But not nearly as important as the Emperor's Trap is to that Imperial Trooper team. And this is something that I think when you get your Executor, you start thinking about equipping this Zeta just to make sure you have the fastest Executor that you can. All right, Jedi Knight Anakin is next. So a lot of players, you'll get Jedi Knight Anakin early, right? He's one of the early Jedi. You're going to use him. But his Zeta here, if Padme Amidala is an ally, she takes a bonus turn after each of Anakin's bonus turns. So unless you're using Padme with him all the time, that Zeta's pointless. Now, later on in your journey, you're going to want to do that for territory battles, probably territory wars as well. But you think about something like a GAC, or if you got them early to use in a Jedi Knight Revenue, you don't have Padme yet, just skip the Zeta. Apply it when you've got a Padme team that's worth investing into. Because, it's a great Zeta to have. It's definitely one I think that has lost some functionality because I'm not always using him with Padme anymore. But for a long time I was. So it's one of these Zetas that, again, when you get Padme, boom, do it. But before then, just hold off. It's better to spend them elsewhere. All right, Mara Jade is next, and she has a Zeta here on Ultimate Predator. This ability deals double damage to shocked enemies and Jedi. The reason I say this is one that you can kind of skip and apply later is a lot of you are going to get Mara Jade at 3 stars, unlock her, and then you're going to kind of move to something else. That's the advice I normally recommend to players. I mean, you could go take her to 7-star for all I care, but you could really just get her to 3 stars, use her at Gear 8, even Gear 11 if you had to, but like Gear 8, with a fast Mara Jade, it still does work. So if you don't have her at that max gear level, like dealing double damage, that's not what she's there for. She's there for the debuffs to get this Pop-A-Palp turn meter train running. So if you're worried about dealing damage with Mara Jade, you're thinking of the wrong stuff, right? That's not what she's there for. Now, when you've got her at relic levels, you're using her as Star Killer, all of a sudden her dealing damage is really nice because that can catch a lot of players off guard. If your Mara Jade is starting to crit for some crazy numbers, then yes, that makes sense. But in my mind, you're normally, because normally I'm using this ability first anyway. So I'm not attacking enemies with shock the first time I use that ability. So I don't know. It's kind of one of these situations where, like I said, later on, you get her to relic levels, you start thinking about it. But before then, it's not worth your time. All right, Dark Trooper is next, and this is on his bombarding reinforcements here, that if he has less than 3 stacks of Dark Trooper, it gains 1 stack of Dark Trooper squad. The thing is, I don't get enough use out of this. It's not often enough that he's losing stacks, because a lot of times I'm outrunning the enemy team, right? The enemy team is not moving first when I'm using my Imperial Troopers. So the situations where he is losing stacks, it's so rare. It has saved me. I'm not going to pretend it hasn't. This has won me fights against Darth Revan teams, but there's also times where I never use it, right? Majority of the time, I'd never use it. It's a great luxury. It's a luxury Zeta. I don't feel like, in my mind, it's not going to cost you what it's going to cost you on that Zeta, right? That you could equip this Zeta elsewhere and get use out of it. That will probably net you more Grand Arena wins than this one would if I was to make a judgment call. I don't think it's going to give you enough. Again, I'm not saying you don't equip it, right? Because you equip it later. But early on, there's more impactful Zetas to get. I sound like a broken record, and I am, but tell me I'm not wrong, right? All right, R2-D2. Both of his Zetas, you want to wait for BB-8. The reason you want to wait for BB-8 for these Zetas is you're just not going to have a place to really utilize R2 for a little bit. He's a great plug and play. He's got so many tags. But like the joking like wait for BB-8 is BB-8's not hard to get. So you're going to get JTR because you're going for Jedi Master Luke, who R2-D2 is a requirement. So if you get BB-8 with JTR and R2, that's a great team. I use that team all the time. And then you can start thinking about those Zetas. The other time you could really do this is when you're going to be using like Galactic Republic, like Padme, you could put R2 in there. Because they're going to gain 10% of his stats, which is awesome. And they're getting 10% of his protection, offense, health, and potency. So if you mod him properly, they can gain a ton of really good stats from him. And then while he's active and they score a critical hit, a light side ally, they'll dispel all debuffs. I mean, those are two great Zetas. I don't think everybody fully comprehends just how game-changing those Zetas can be in the right squad, right? In the right squad, in the right situation, those Zetas are so freaking good. Like I've seen a lot of players use R2-D2 with Galactic Legend Rey because she's going to be gaining 10% of his, these numbers down here, which the offense and health is crazy because if you mod him for those two things, she's getting 10% of that and hitting even harder. And then finally, Candorus Ordo Zeta, which is it on his unique ability? Yes. He gains critical damage up for 2 turns when an enemy gains taunt, becomes death marked or marked, right? I think that's the Zeta. Let me make sure of that. I'm pretty sure that's the right. I can't always keep up with the Zetas, but I'm pretty sure that's the one. Let's see. I'm doing my research on my screen here. Yes. The critical damage up is super nice, right? Super nice. The thing is, it's when they gain taunt, or death mark, or marked, so it's really, really like it's kind of situational on how that's happening. The other thing is, like, crit damage up is very good, but Candorus himself, he can do some good damage, but he's not hitting crazy, crazy hard. So my opinion, it's something you kind of skip for later on down the road when you really need it or you really want it. But for what a lot of people are going to use them for, you probably don't need that Zeta, if I'm being completely honest. I don't think you'll need it. But that's the video, guys. Those are Zetas that I would skip. Again, I'm going to link the farming guide in the description down below, so make sure you guys go check that out. Hit that subscribe button. I don't know what our new goal is for 10,000 subscribers. I need you guys to figure that out for me. So we'll leave it with our king for now. I love all of you guys. May the force be with you, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.